Okay, let's say that we now want to count the number of employees in each of these regions. So we have our region here, we have our total sales. Let's say we want to do number of employees. And what we want to do is we only want to count those people, the number of people in the Midwest. So Excel, again, can help us do that very easily with a formula. We're going to say equals count if. It's going to ask us for the range, and we're going to say the range here is, again, our same data set. And we're going to freeze that. Another way that you can easily freeze this range is while you're typing the formula. Once you've highlighted the cells, if you hit F4 at that point in time, it will automatically put in those dollar signs for you. So you don't have to go back and click twice and put those in. So another easy trick there. And then we're going to say comma, the criteria is going to be this region, so Midwest. And we're going to do close parentheses. Again, we don't want to freeze the Midwest or K3 because we're going to drag this down. So we're going to hit enter. Looks like 2 people in the Midwest, 3 in the Northeast, 3 in the South, and 2 in the Northwest. Again, if you wanted to do an average, you could very easily do that here too. Average, so equals, we're going to arrow over to the 36,000, and then we're going to go divided by the 2 and hit enter. 18,000 apiece, and you can see there. So although the Midwest is third in terms of sales, total sales, they are first in terms of average per employee. So that would probably be pretty interesting to know. So just some basic tips there on Countif that can be very helpful as well when you have big, massive data sets. Let's say that you want to, again, we're talking incentive compensation, and what you want to do is you want to highlight those employees or give those employees who sold over $10,000 an added little bonus. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in some columns here. So I'm going to highlight these, right click, say insert. That's going to give us a little bit more room to work here. What I want to do is we're going to write an if-then statement. You've probably heard of these before. These are pretty common in Excel. It's a basic logic statement that you can use to flag various different data sets. So what we're going to do here is we're going to call this individual incentive comp. So what I want to do is I want to say, again, we're gonna reward those people who sold over $10,000. So we're going to say equals, open parentheses, equals if, then open parentheses. And it's going to ask us for a logical test. So if this person's sales is greater than, so shift caret, 10,000, comma, value, if it's true, we're going to do a 1, and if it's false, we're going to do a 0. And then close parenthesis, and I'm going to hit enter. That person gets a 0. Why? Because they are right at $10,000, but we said they are greater than $10,000. If we wanted to do greater than or equal to, all we'd have to do is put in an equal there. That would change to a 1. So let's go back though. We're going to do just greater than $10,000. I'm going to delete that equal sign and hit enter. And again, on this one, we don't have to freeze anything because we want the formula to adapt as it goes down. So black plus sign, double click, copies it all the way down. Looks like we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people who qualify for this special individual incentive compensation. So pretty cool way to flag various different employees, and you can create, get very creative with your if-then statements. Really the key here is to make sure that it does make logical sense, and Excel will typically pick up on it, and it works really, really well. I use if-then statements all the time when I'm writing formulas and creating tools and things like that. One thing I want to show you too is that if you have an error in your formulas, sometimes an error will pop up as you're writing formulas, and you want that error to stand out in a certain way. So you want to tell it that when there is an error, give me a certain flag. So let's say, for example, we miskeyed, instead of $2,000 here in the Northwest, we accidentally hit U, the Q key. You can see in our rank that we now have a value freak out right? So it's hashtag value exclamation point, saying this is an error. I don't know what to do with it. I cannot rank the character U with the rest of these dollar signs. So what we want to do is, in order to get rid of this, we're going to go up to the top, and we're going to, if you put if error in the front of any kind of formula after the equal sign, you can tell it to give you back whatever you want it to give you if you have an error on that formula. So I'm going to type in here if error, ERROR, and then open paren, and then we're going to enclose that whole parenthesis in the error. So that's going to be our value. We're going to hit comma and value if error. So it's saying if it does return an error, what do you want it to say? In my case, I'm going to type Bailey. That's the name of my dog. I always type in Bailey because that's just what I've done since the beginning. So I'm going to do Bailey and hit enter. And there we go. Now it shows up as Bailey. So that's an if error. It's an easy way. Then we can come up here and we can sort by, or we can filter by the Baileys to figure out, okay, what are the errors that we need to clear out. So if I deselect all of these and only check on Bailey, we bring up employee 7, the sales is a U. Okay, now we need to go back and figure out where that data came from and why it's wrong and what we can do about it, and probably manually enter it in at this point. But what we're going to do is Control Z to get out of these changes that I made. Now we are back to our original data set. The next thing that I wanted to show you is called a Vlookup. Vlookup is one of the most important formulas that you can use in Excel. I use it all the time to bring in data from other data sources into the one that I'm currently working on. So I'm going to show you how to do this using this spreadsheet along with our original data set here with our engineers. And so we're going to do that. I'm going to actually add another worksheet. And we're going to do that here. We're going to call this Vlookup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these employee IDs over. Control C. I'm going to click on the lookup and Control V. So there's our employee IDs. Now let's say that I want to know. Let's pretend like these employees are the 10 employees, the first 10 employees from our original engineering data set, this data set. You can see that it would be really hard to go through and figure out, okay, where's the top 10, how do I find the 10 employees, etc., etc. So we don't want to do that. Vlookup gives us a way to do that very easily. So I'm going to type here gender. Now a Vlookup is exactly what it stands for, vertical lookup. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to type in equals Vlookup, open parenthesis, and it's going to ask you, what is the lookup value? What do you want me to look up? And in this case, we're going to say we want you to look up the number 1, comma, table array. It's going to say, okay, well, what table do you want me to look it up in? We're going to say sheet 1, ID number. So I'm going to click up at the top, and I'm going to say shift right arrow, and then control shift down arrow to highlight our entire data set. You can see here it still shows you what it's asking for, so you don't get lost. So I'm going to say comma again, and it's going to ask me for the column index number, which basically means what column in that table that you just gave me do you want me to bring back for you, which in this case we highlighted 2 columns. It was the ID number, which we wanted to look up, and the gender column, which is column number 2. So we're going to type in the number 2, and we're going to then comma and type in false, which we want an exact match. Close parenthesis, enter, there we go. Employee number 1 is a female. So the keys to a Vlookup, again, we want to, before we copy this down, I'm going to do the freeze the table. So we're going to put our cursor here, hit F4, enter, and then we're going to copy this down. Double click, there we go. So the keys to a Vlookup you can do. You don't have to start it in the upper left corner. You can start it really anywhere in the worksheet, but the key to the Vlookup is that it's going to look up your far left column. So your unique identifier for whoever you're looking up should be in your far left column. So let's do Vlookup again, and we're instead of gender, we're going to look up most recent performance rating. So we're going to do MRPR, most recent performance rating. I'm going to say equals Vlookup. Again, we want it to look up our employee ID, comma. In this case, we want it to be the whole table because we're going to go all the way over here to our most recent performance rating. So I'm going to hold shift and arrow over and then control shift down. Whoop. Sorry, shift all the way over, control shift down. There we go. Now we're going to freeze that, so I'm going to type F4, and then we're going to say comma and column index number. So we need to count the number of columns that most recent performance rating is in. So A is 1, this ID number is 1, this is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's column 8. We're going to type in the number 8, comma, false. Close parenthesis, enter. Employee 1 got a 3. So we're going to copy this down. What if we change this to, instead of column index number 8, we change it to 7? Well, that's going to pull back the person's, I believe it's age. Nope, tenure. That's the person's tenure. So we're going to copy this down. Now we have everybody's tenure. So it's a very cool formula. You can use it for all sorts of different things if you're trying to manipulate data and use it to bring data in. I will use this many times if you have disparate systems that house different types of data, but there is a unique identifier in it. So for example, employee ID or maybe email, and you're trying to pull in sales information from one system, and you're trying to pull in tenure and age and gender and all those things from another system. It's very easy to merge those things together when you use VLOOKUPs to have one data set that you can then work with and tell your story. So VLOOKUPs are super powerful, very cool tool that you can use with Excel, and they're very common and a really great thing to learn. So I would say practice with those. Sometimes they're a little difficult to pick up, but with practice, you'll be able to pick it up, no problem.